look at conditionals 2. So this is a little bit more complex, um, using conditions like not equal, less than, greater than, along with nesting conditions. So we're going to nest if-else statements. So in this example here, you're given two variables containing some kind of an indicator of the answer machine being switched on or not. So true or false, and some kind of a score. And you're also given an uninitialized response variable. So we can see over here in the code, we have let response, so that's our uninitialized variable, meaning it's not assigned to a value. And then we have a score of 75, and then we have something that says let machine active equal false. And we have a spot here where we're going to put our code. So what we need to do to begin is to create an if-else structure that checks whether the machine is on and puts a message into the response if it is not on, telling the user to turn on the machine. So first part of our if-else is going to be something like this. So we're going to say if, parentheses for our condition, and then curly braces. And the goal here is to apply a different message based on the score. So right now the score is set to 75, and what we want to do is, based on whatever the score happens to be, I'll put a different message. So our tests are listed here. So if a score is between, let's see, less than 0, more than 100, it says this is not possible, an error occurred. So you're out of range. And now if you're in the bottom of the range, 0 to 19, it says it's a terrible score. If you're at 20 to 39, it says you know some things, but it's a pretty bad score, needs improvement. 40 to 69, 70, 89, and 90 to 100. So what we need to do is come up with maybe even just some pseudocode where we can take these scores and responses and maybe we'll put these in here like so. And so by putting our output in here, we can begin to write our code, and we might even just comment this out to start so that we can work with it up here in the if. So our first thing we want to do is check for the machine being active. So we can test that by just inputting the variable name as the condition. We don't say true, false, or anything. If we just say the variable name, JavaScript checks to see if it exists and has a value. So right now the machine is set to false, and so we're going to say if machine active, meaning it's going to test, and then our else would be something like, it says up here, it says we have to check whether the machine's turned on or off. Switched on, put a message into the variable that says switch the machine on. So I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to set response, which is not assigned to anything above yet. Response equal something like that. So I'm going to say, hey, switch the machine on. So there's my if machine active, meaning true, do something, otherwise say turn the machine on. So now inside of this first if, we're going to write conditions for all of these scores. So the first thing we want to do is do our out of range. So we're going to say if score, so we put our conditions here. So the text that I'm looking at says if score less than 0 or more than 100. So I know less than, so I'm going to do less than 0, and then I want to say or score greater than 100. Unfortunately, or in all caps isn't valid code here. So what we want to use is two pipes. So pipe like that means or. We also have the opportunity to do and by doing double ampersands. Then we can say not with an exclamation. So here we're going to say if the score is less than 0 or the score is greater than 100, do something. So if that's true, we're going to output the fact that this is impossible and an error has occurred. So I'm going to take this line out of the content here. And that's our if. So now for the additional ranges, 0 through 100, these all become else ifs. So our next one is else if, and after the if, our next criteria here in the round parentheses. The next one says if the score is between 0 and 19. So instead of or, it's not 0 or, it's and. So we're going to have to input the range here. So if score is 0 up to, so we're going to say and score is, let's see, we could do that with 20, I think. So instead of equal, we don't want the score test whether it's equal or not. We want to say it's greater than or equal to 0, and here, instead of equals, we're going to say less than or equal to 20, which will imply that it's 19. So on this one, actually I'll just take this line here and we'll put our response, save us a little bit of typing. So I'm going to say response equals, that was a terrible score, fail, and that closes out that else if. So now I'm just going to copy the pattern here for the else if, and I'm going to eyeball down here. It's 20 to 39, 40 to 69, 70 to 89, and 90 to 100. So now I just reuse the same pattern over and over here and change my ranges. So the next range is 20 to 39. So it's got to be greater than, equal to 20, and less than equal to 40, and then 70, and then 90, and 100. And then we're going to go 20, 40. Evidently stop the recording by tapping on my touch bar here, so just to get you guys caught back up. What I did was copy the first range of the else if and duplicated it to match all the criteria I've got to output here. And then what I've done is change the ranges. So I'm going to be looking at greater than 0 and less than 20, greater than 20 and less than 40, greater than 40, less than 70, greater than 70 and less than 90, and then greater than 90 but less than 100. And so now I can just take all my messages here and copy and paste them in. So that's my 20, like that. Then my pass, and that's a great score, and what an amazing score here. So you'll notice when I copy this, I've got some escape characters that I can get rid of because I'm using double quotes around everything. And so my last response, I just want to make sure we're hitting all the criteria here. So in our ranges, let's just double check we've got these things set correct here. Greater than equal to on score, and then less than equal to 20. all the way down. So if we want to score 100, we're going to have to play with that, just because it looks like that wouldn't include the value of 100. So let's save, and let's take a look at our code, because I see some cautions here, warnings here about an error on my else. Let's see what happened. I've got an extra closing else from my bulk copy paste here. So if you're unsure where these brackets are supposed to be open and closed, in VS Code it's going to show you the pair. So if you highlight the last one, it should show you the first, so you can make sure everything's balanced. Click on each one as you go up, and you can see they're lined up. So here's my other duplicate here. So now that's matched, and that's matched. So even before I've tested anything, I have fixed a couple errors. So next thing I want to do is refresh my page and see what happens. So I've got an error on line 72. Says syntax error, unexpected end of input. So line 72 is way down here. We've got some weirdness going on with our script. So I bet we're just missing a closing set of tags here. So on my big outer if, it looks like I don't have a closing bracket. That would be my first thing to look at, because this one is my nested one. So you can see if I select that, if I select that. So this one up here isn't closed. So it could be just as simple as that. Save that, refresh. Okay, so now we don't have that console error, and it says my score is 75. So what does that code actually do down here? So where we're not supposed to edit, it's going to create a paragraph, tells me the score, and then tells me the response. And then it appends paragraph 1 and 2 to the section of the page. So we're not getting a response for some reason. So the score is 75. So it's a number. Let machine active is set to false. So let's try and set this to true. Save, refresh. Okay, so because the machine was false, it was going through all the logic and saying if the machine is active, meaning true, do all that stuff. Otherwise, it should have given us the response to switch the machine on. So let's try this one more time, set to false. And I don't see it. So let's take a look and see what other issues we might be running into here. So false. So for some reason we're not making it. So maybe you experience the same thing in your code. So we've got our if open, bunch of nested if else, and so let's test our ranges at least to start. So let's test the score of 1,000. See if we get our out of range error. So we don't. So if the score is greater than 100, let's turn the machine on. So now we're over 1,000. It says this is not possible. So let's try negative. Still says this is not possible. So if we set the score equal to 0, say it's a terrible score, 100, So it says, wow, amazing, you did cheat. Okay, so that's working. We get that response. But for some reason, our outer else is not working. So this and this ends there. So maybe what we need is, I think we accidentally deleted that extra bracket there. So this now matches up to the outer. So if the machine is active, does all that stuff. Otherwise, it should say switch the machine. Let's see. So our code still works when it's true, when the score is valid. So we're going to put this back to 75, set the machine to off. It's false. And now we get the switch the machine on message. So when we're writing code like this, we do want to validate all of our possible options. Make sure our messaging shows up, and in this instance, just double check that all of your brackets are closed. And when you're nesting this many statements, sometimes it's helpful to kind of start over. So if I know this is my if, I might put in here this happens true, and then I'd close that, and then I'd say else, and then say this happens when false. So that way I know I have a valid if else, and then I could take my valid nested if and pop that into the part here that says this is what should happen when the thing is true, and then I could take my response here and say this is what happens when the outer if else is false. And so in this instance, this still kind of goofed it up. So that needs to close there, that closes there, and I think we're back in action here. So there's that. Now if we test the score, again 1000, it still tells me the score, but the machine's off. So we test it true. So it's not possible. We say 89. We should get, that's a great score, your stuff. So less than or equal to 90, less than or equal to 100. So 89, 59, we do 49, 39, 29, 19, and that should be the end of our ranges there. So that kind of wraps up conditional 2.